Hey folks, Adrian Amos out here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about anti-phishing training. Start with the concept of phishing in general, right? Phishing, if you're not familiar with it, is the practice of malicious actors sending emails or somehow otherwise trying to coax your users into going to places where they will reveal their username and password. They have a lot of different ways to do it, and frankly, we don't have that many ways to directly combat it. We have some identity controls that we can exercise. We have training we can exercise. But what started to happen recently is I've heard more and more pushback against the technology of anti-phishing training. So let's talk a little bit about what it is, what some of the controversies are, whether or not we really need to be using it at all, and how. So, anti-phishing training basically replicates what malicious actors are doing out in the wild. It allows us as administrators to package up malicious email, bad email, fake forms, malicious attachments, fake websites that are all designed to get the user to reveal their username and password. Technology's existed for a few years. It's been made by several different vendors, and all of them, to a single one, every single one will agree that statistically and anecdotally, they are effective at reducing users' willingness to compromise credentials by 75%. Now, they don't phrase it that way. What they say is, when you send your first round of anti-phishing training to untested users, 40% will fail. We've seen that pretty consistently for years. What they also then say is that within 2 or 3 training cycles, that percentage will drop to 10%. That is a 75% reduction in your attack surface for credentials. Now, what else do we have in the toolbox, right? We can enable multi-factor authentication, and you absolutely should. Once we get to the point we have multi-factor or passwordless authentication on 100% of our systems, this argument will probably be moot, and we can probably do away with anti-phishing training. But even multi-factor and even some flavors of passwordless still have their weak spots. So I still think it's valuable. So why is it controversial then? Well, users have come to believe recently that it is IT's responsible to secure all aspects of information. They have a point, right? We certainly are responsible for providing secure access to systems. But we would also not expect facilities management to be 100% responsible for making sure every door and window is locked behind us when we're the ones opening the doors and windows. We would also expect to take on a certain amount of personal responsibility for every key that we have that gets us into every door, every badge that gets us onto every shop floor, everything that gets us into any secure portion of a facility is a shared responsibility between me, the user, and the organization. And IT is no different. And part of our facilities security is going to involve a certain amount of training. And that training is going to have to include both how to use the technologies, how to not use the technologies. If you ever worked in the military, you know exactly what I mean. It's part of your anti-terrorist training. And also, what to do when it goes wrong. How do we report it? Anti-phishing training is that for your IT side. And what we find in a lot of organizations is that aside from anti-phishing training, the user training budget is $0. So, if we're prioritizing our spending anywhere, it's not a terrible place to start. How to secure your identity is a daggone good launch pad. So, what else is a problem with it? Well, users think it's an abdication of responsibility from IT. IT people are seeing pushback from other parts of the organization where they're looking to reduce costs in payroll, salary. So we're seeing organizations tying anti-phishing training results to salary. And that is a terrible, terrible idea. The other part of this that we're seeing being controversial is some organizations are taking a carrot or a stick approach. Now, we've actually advocated for years that it doesn't matter whether you take a carrot or a stick approach. You still get that 75% ROI as long as you take an approach. Now, it actually does matter, though, how you go about implementing that carrot or stick. Carrot, you reward the users who pass. Stick, you punish those who fail. If we take the stick approach, what we're starting to see some organizations do is tie performance and anti-phishing training to salary. I don't think that's going to be very successful for a lot of folks. I think organizations stand the risk of losing good people by docking pay for training. I don't think we would dock pay for training because users learn how to use new systems on the shop floor, new systems in the mailroom, new applications to get the job done. We've seen some organizations have great success not tying performance to users, but tying the executive compensation bonus structures to either their own anti-phishing results or their divisions. What that allows an organization to do is drive a true top-down model where if executives are not buying into the idea that security first and foremost in IT, then they show themselves the door. They usually don't. They usually turn the behavior around. Partially because it's tough to apply for a new job and have to explain that the reason you're doing so is because you just don't believe in all this IT security hoo-ha. So, we know what anti-phishing training is. We know the users don't love it, but we do train them on things, and I think it's important that we continue to train people on things. We know that we don't generally have huge IT budgets for training in general. We know that we don't usually have huge IT budgets for security in general. We know that security has to be a top-down drive from senior management in order to succeed in an organization. So how do we do it properly? Well, going back to the carrot or stick, we do know, again, 75% reduction in the surface area. So I think the default stance, in most cases, should be carrot. But we have to be careful with what that carrot looks like. We've seen organizations decide to do really cool things like everyone who passes the test gets a pizza party. And that's great. Except that one of those organizations also invited all the people who didn't pass to come participate but not eat pizza. There was an interesting backlash in that those who did not pass dive bombed the entire party and stole as much pizza as they could. Obviously, that revealed that there were some other issues in that organization, but I do think a carrot approach, rewarding good behavior, just like we would do with rewarding good behavior and passing any other certification, right? I mean, in the IT world, it used to be customary that when you passed the certification exam, you took the rest of the day off. Some of you may not be old enough to remember that, but if you pass the test, you usually don't pay for it. Those are the sort of things that work as really good carrot behaviors. A very small compensation, whether it's a group lunch, group activity, whatever, is always going to be better than actually punishing our users because we haven't invested properly in teaching them how to secure our systems. I am not here to sell you one particular system or another. There are tons of them out there on the market. Many of them encourage users to interact with them and actually report things so the systems can learn what your users should be seeing and what they shouldn't be seeing and fill gaps in their own machine learning. But there you go. Curious to know what you think. Is anti-phishing training a boondoggle or is it a critical component of our IT security strategy? Let me know. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.